Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive?
Absolutely. Always ready to explore the fascinating world of cell biology.
Today, we're going deep into a cellular process that might sound a little jargony at first. The TGF-beta signaling pathway.
Yeah, it doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, does it?
Not quite, but trust me, it's way more exciting than the name might suggest.
Oh, absolutely. It's a pathway that touches so many aspects of our biology. It's mind-blowing.
And our guide for this journey is an article called Deciphering the Intricacies of TGF-beta Signaling Pathway from Assay Genie. They're a company that provides research tools and resources for scientists.
Great source. They really dig into the nitty-gritty of this pathway.
Okay, so the article makes it clear that this pathway is involved in a lot. We're talking shaping us before we're born, influencing our immune system, even playing a role in some pretty serious diseases.
No kidding. It's involved in everything from embryonic development to cancer.
Okay, so right off the bat, this is sounding pretty important. But before we get into all that, let's start with the basics. What exactly is TGF-beta?
Right, let's break it down. So TGF-beta stands for Transforming Growth Factor Beta.
Catchy.
I know, right? But here's the thing. It's not just one thing. It's actually a whole family of these signaling molecules called cytokines.
Okay, so it's like a whole team of messengers?
Exactly. Think of them as tiny proteins that our cells use to communicate with each other, like a cellular messaging system.
Got it. So TGF-beta is like sending out these important memos that can change how cells behave.
Perfect analogy. And in mammals, there are three main types of these TGF-beta messengers: TGF-1, TGF-2, and TGF-3, kind of like different flavors of the same message.
Interesting. So we've got our messengers, but how do they actually deliver the message? The article talks about a cascade of events, which makes it sound pretty complex.
Well, it is complex, but also super elegant in a way. It all starts when a TGF-beta molecule, our messenger, finds and binds to a specific receptor on the surface of a cell.
So each messenger has its own specific receptor.
Yeah, you can think of it like a key fitting into a lock.
Okay, I'm visualizing that. The TGF-beta molecule is the key that unlocks the door to the cell. But what happens inside?
That's where things get really interesting. This unlocking sets off a chain reaction inside the cell, ultimately changing the instructions that cell is following from its DNA.
Wow, so it can actually change what the cell is doing.
Yep. And a key player in this chain reaction is a group of proteins called Smads.
Smads. Okay. Not the most intuitive name. What are they up to?
Well, think of them as the couriers carrying the message.
The message from the TGF-beta.
Right. They carry it from that initial unlocking at the cell surface all the way to the nucleus, which is like the cell's control center.
So it's like a relay race. TGF-beta passes the baton to the receptor, then the receptor triggers the Smads, and the Smads sprint to the nucleus with the message.
I like that, a cellular relay race. And once those Smads reach the nucleus, they help determine which genes get switched on or off.
So they're basically controlling the cell's operations.
You got it. That's how the message ultimately changes what the cell is doing, whether it grows, divides, maybe even self-destructs.
Wow. It's incredible how much control this pathway has over a cell's fate.
Right. And remember, this whole TGF-beta signaling thing, it's not just a linear process.
Meaning?
Well, it's constantly interacting with other signaling pathways inside the cell. It's like a complex web of communication with signals influencing each other.
So it's not as simple as just one message leading to one outcome.
Exactly. It's a dynamic system, always responding to changes within and outside the cell.
That makes sense. It's starting to feel like a really intricate dance happening inside each of our cells.
That's a great way to put it. And now that we've got a grasp on how this intricate pathway works, ready to explore the amazing roles it plays in our bodies.
Definitely. The article mentioned it's involved in everything from embryonic development to wound healing. Where should we start?
Let's begin at the very beginning, shall we? Embryonic development.
Sounds good to me. Back to the womb we go.
So TGF-beta signaling is absolutely crucial for how our organs form. We're talking shaping who we are even before we're born.
It's like the architect of our bodies.
Yeah.
Pretty amazing to think about. But what happens if something goes wrong with this signaling during development?
Well, that's when things can get tricky. Disruptions in this process can lead to birth defects.
Wow, that really highlights how crucial this pathway is right from the get-go.
You bet. But its role doesn't end there. TGF-beta is a busy molecule.
So TGF-beta is essential for building our bodies.
Mm-hmm.
What else is it involved in?
Well, it also plays a critical role in regulating cell growth and death throughout our lives.
Oh, even after we're born, it's still busy at work.
Oh, absolutely. Think of it like a careful balancing act. Sometimes it promotes cell growth when needed, but it can also trigger cell death to get rid of damaged or potentially harmful cells.
Like it's deciding which cells live and which ones die.
In a way, yes. It's all about maintaining the health and integrity of our tissues and organs.
So it's like the ultimate cellular quality control manager, making sure everything is running smoothly.
Exactly. But here's where things take an interesting turn, and this part really surprised me when I first learned about it.
Oh, I love surprises. What is it?
Remember how we mentioned wound healing earlier? Well, TGF-beta is a key player in that too.
Makes sense. Repairing tissues, that sort of thing.
Right. It helps form new blood vessels and lays down collagen, which is like the scaffolding for tissues. But
There's but coming, isn't there?
there is too much TGF-beta activity, especially for a long time, can actually backfire.
So too much of a good thing can be a bad thing.
You nailed it. It can lead to a buildup of excess scar tissue, a process called fibrosis.
Fibrosis, I've heard that term before.
It's basically when, instead of a nice, neat repair, you get this thick, fibrous tissue that can actually stiffen organs and mess with how they work.
Oh, I see. So it's like too many construction workers on a job can end up making a mess.
Haha, perfect analogy. And this fibrosis thing, it can be a real problem in organs like the lungs, liver, and kidneys.
Wow. So it's a double-edged sword. Too much of a good thing can really backfire in this case.
Exactly. And that's what makes TGF-beta such a fascinating target for therapies. We need to figure out ways to block it when it's overactive, but also boost it in situations where we need to help healing along.
So scientists are trying to find ways to control this powerful molecule.
They are, but it's tricky because, as we've seen, TGF-beta is involved in so many different things.
That makes sense. It sounds like scientists are walking a tightrope trying to find that perfect balance.
You could say that. And before we dive into the challenges of targeting TGF-beta, there's another really cool aspect we should touch on.
Oh, what's that?
Its role in our immune system.
Hmm.
Talk about a multitasking molecule.
All right. The article mentioned TGF-beta having some surprising effects on the immune system.
It does. It can actually have opposite effects depending on the situation, which is pretty wild when you think about it.
Okay, I'm intrigued. How can it have opposite effects?
It all comes down to context. Sometimes TGF-beta acts like a peacekeeper, preventing our immune system from going overboard and attacking our own tissues.
So it's like keeping those overzealous immune cells in check.
Exactly, which is super important for preventing autoimmune diseases, where the immune system mistakenly attacks the body.
Right, that makes sense.
Right.
But I thought you said it could have the opposite effect, too.
I did. And here's the twist. TGF-beta can also switch gears and actually contribute to inflammation.
Wait, so it can both suppress AND, promote inflammation?
Yep. It all depends on what the body needs at that moment. If we need to fight off an infection or repair damaged tissue, TGF-beta can help rally the troops and get the inflammatory response going.
Wow, so it's playing both sides of the field. That's pretty incredible.
It is. It just goes to show how complex and nuanced this pathway is. There's always more to learn.
This deep dive is already blowing my mind. We've learned how TGF-beta acts like a cellular messenger, shapes us before we're even born, and can either help or hinder our bodies depending on the situation. I have a feeling there's even more to uncover about this powerful pathway.
Oh, you bet there is. And next, we'll delve into the therapeutic potential of TGF-beta, and as you might imagine, it's a bit of a balancing act. You're right, there's a whole world of possibilities when it comes to TGF-beta and therapies.
Yeah, the article highlighted two main approaches to targeting it. Can you walk us through those?
Sure thing. So first, think about situations where TGF-beta is kind of going overboard, like in certain cancers or those fibrotic diseases we were talking about.
Right, where there's too much of it.
Exactly. In those cases, the goal is to hit the brakes, to stop it from doing its thing.
Okay, makes sense. But how do you actually stop it?
Well, scientists are developing all sorts of things, like inhibitors that directly block the TGF-beta molecule itself.
So they're just grabbing it and saying, nope.
Pretty much. Or they block the receptors so the TGF-beta can't even get in to deliver its message.
Clever, like putting up a wall around the cell.
Yeah, you could think of it that way. And there are even more targeted therapies being developed that disrupt specific parts of that signaling cascade we talked about.
Oh, right, that whole relay race thing.
Yep. It's like cutting the wires in a specific communication channel.
Super precise. That's incredible. But what about the flip side, situations where we actually need more TGF-beta activity?
Great question. That's the other approach, boosting its activity.
So instead of blocking it, we're giving it a little extra push.
Exactly. This could be super useful for things like tissue regeneration or speeding up wound healing.
I can see how that would be helpful. So how do they actually boost it?
Well, there are a few strategies being explored. One way is to use growth factors, these special molecules that stimulate TGF-beta production.
So they're like cheerleaders for TGF-beta, telling it to produce more and more and more.
Haha, that's a fun way to picture it. And another approach is gene therapy.
Where they actually insert genes into the cells.
Exactly. Genes that contain the instructions for making more TGF-beta. It's pretty cutting-edge stuff.
It sounds like there's a ton of potential for TGF-beta-based therapies, but I imagine it's not all smooth sailing. This pathway is so complex, and it's involved in so many things. I'm guessing there are some challenges, too.
Oh, absolutely. It's not as simple as just throwing TGF-beta at a problem and hoping it works.
So what are some of the hurdles?
Well, the biggest one is the need for precision. The article really stressed that we have to be incredibly careful when we try to manipulate TGF-beta.
Because it's such a powerful molecule and involved in so much.
Right. It's like trying to fine-tune a really complicated machine. You need to adjust the right levers without throwing the whole thing out of whack.
That's a great analogy. I can see how that would be tough. So how do researchers even begin to figure out the right approach, blocking or boosting, and how to do it safely?
It's a big challenge, and it really requires understanding the context. Like, how does TGF-beta signaling differ between people, different cell types, and even different diseases?
Right, because it's not just one size fits all.
Exactly. And that's where things get really exciting, because this is where personalized medicine comes in.
I was wondering when we'd get to that. It feels like the future of medicine.
It really does. Imagine being able to look at a person's genes, the specific characteristics of their disease, and say, okay, this is the best way to tweak TGF-beta signaling for you.
That would be incredible, like a totally customized treatment plan.
Exactly. And thanks to all the progress being made in fields like genomics and our ability to analyze huge amounts of data, we're actually getting closer to that reality.
Wow, I love hearing about all this cutting-edge stuff. It really feels like we're on the verge of a revolution in medicine.
I think so too.
Yeah.
It's a really exciting time to be following this field.
Absolutely. This has been an incredible journey into the world of TGF-beta signaling so far. From how it works at the cellular level to the amazing roles it plays throughout our lives and now these potential therapies, it's just incredible.
It's amazing, right? And this is only scratching the surface. There's still so much we don't know about TGF-beta.
I can only imagine what other secrets this pathway holds.
Me too. But one thing is clear. Understanding how to target TGF-beta safely and effectively is going to be crucial for the future of medicine.
I totally agree. So, as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, what are some of the key takeaways you think our listeners should keep in mind about targeting TGF-beta?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that it's all about precision. We can't just barge in and start messing with TGF-beta without really understanding the consequences,
Right, like you were saying before, it's like trying to fine-tune a complex machine.
Exactly. And to do that, we need to gather as much information as possible.
About the patient.
Yeah, about the individual patient, their genes, their lifestyle, the specifics of their disease. It's all going to play a role.
So it's not as simple as just developing a drug that targets TGF-beta. It's about finding the right drug for the right patient at the right time.
You got it. And that's where personalized medicine comes in. It's about tailoring treatments to the unique needs of each individual.
Which is amazing when you think about it. It really feels like we're on the cusp of a whole new era of medicine.
I agree. And with all the tools we're developing, like being able to analyze a person's entire genome or all the proteins in their cells, we're getting closer and closer to making that vision a reality.
It's so exciting to think about the possibilities.
Yeah.
But it also makes you realize just how much we still don't know.
Oh, for sure. TGF-beta is just one pathway, and it's already so complex. There's a whole universe of interactions happening inside our bodies that we're still trying to unravel.
But mind-blowing.
Yeah.
But it also makes me feel hopeful, knowing that there are so many brilliant people out there dedicated to understanding these processes and developing new treatments.
Me too. I think the key takeaway for our listeners today is that TGF-beta is a powerful force in our bodies, and we're only just beginning to scratch the surface of its potential.
Absolutely. It's a molecule that shapes who we are, helps us heal, and can even turn against us in some cases. But the more we learn about it, the better equipped we'll be to harness its power for good.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
So to our listeners, we encourage you to keep exploring this topic. Dive deeper into the research, ask questions, and stay curious. Who knows, maybe you'll be the one to unlock the next big breakthrough in TGF-beta research.
That's the beauty of science. There's always more to discover.
And that brings us to the end of our deep dive into the fascinating world of TGF-beta signaling. Thanks for joining us.